When we look into the histories of Arda, we find many dark and terrible figures have appeared throughout the histories, some great and some small, some cunning and some swift, whilst others wielded terrible earth-shattering might. In our previous video covering 8 evil beasts from Middle-earth, we looked into the archives at 8 of the most terrifying and evil beasts that shook the world to its core and almost destroyed it entirely in some instances. Today we focus on a more mysterious figure, the Mouth of Sauron, from which many terrible words have been uttered, and look deeper into the role in the dark work of the One Ring's creator. Greetings all, I'm your guide, the Archivist. Today I will look into the archives at the Mouth of Sauron, their origins, their role in the events of the War of the Ring, and the ultimate defeat of Lord Sauron. Who was the Mouth of Sauron? When delving into the histories, there are few that serve the Dark Lord as closely or as fully as the Mouth of Sauron. His cruelty and cunning was great, and was heavily favoured by Sauron for his dedication to the Dark Lord's cause. It is said he was once named Mordu, but this name was lost to the histories and even to himself as he became more twisted by Sauron's purpose for him. He rose to become one of Sauron's greatest servants and leaders, a trusted emissary, messenger, and even advisor during the War of the Ring, and became a lieutenant of the Tower of Barad-dûr, a great honour considering that he was just a mortal man. Many considered him to be in equal standing with even the Nazgûl, some of Sauron's greatest servants, but despite his similar appearance, he was just a mortal. Origins and appearance. The Mouth of Sauron presented as a tall man, wearing black robes and had a large black helm, giving him the similar appearance of one of the Nazgûl of Sauron. His high esteem in Sauron's eyes also placed him in this category, but he was in fact a mortal man, a renegade said to be one of the Black Númenórean origin. The Black Númenóreans were descendants of Númenor who settled in Middle-earth, turning their back on the light and instead embracing the shadow, worshipping Sauron like a god. Sauron's corruption of Númenor caused some among them to seek him out as their god, whilst those uncorrupted settled and formed the lands of men in the west, including Gondor. It was said in the archives that despite the mystery surrounding his initial origins, his name was Mordu, and he hailed from a noble house in Gondor, but was captured, and once exposed to the dark, it cast a long shadow on his soul. He began to crave the taste of evil knowledge, and once Sauron rose again, he sought to join him. Once in the Dark Lord's service, Mordu rose through the ranks quickly due to his cruelty and cunning, traits that Sauron himself had shown in abundance during the dealings in Middle-earth. Because of his proximity to the Dark Lord and due to his favour, he learned some of Sauron's mind, was taught great sorcery also. He became a powerful symbol for the might of Sauron, and also having a keen mind, became a speaker for the will of the darkness. Because of his abilities and aptitude, he rose to the rank of lieutenant of the Tower of Barad-dûr quite quickly, a great honour not given to many. He was also one of the few beings to directly communicate with Sauron himself, which also gives us great insight into the value that Sauron saw in him, and it is said that he was one of the few beings who used Sauron's elvish name. Whilst delivering missives for the Dark Lord, he would ride a terrible black steed that was hideous with flames for eyes and a skeletal countenance. History before the War of the Ring. The Mouth of Sauron's main entries into the archives happened prior to and during the War of the Ring, although details surrounding some of the potential locations are unsure. It is possible that the Mouth of Sauron was present during the torture of Gollum, eventually learning of Bilbo Baggins and the Shire in regards to the One Ring from 3009 to 3017, and then given the task of finding and retrieving it. Another entry from this period, at 3017, shows that the Mouth of Sauron may have been the messenger sent to the Lonely Mountain, a horseman of the night who offered the dwarves an alliance with Lord Sauron the Great. He offered to trade for the bargain that they share all they know about Bilbo Baggins and the Shire in return for the Kingdom of Moria forever. If they found and returned the ring to him, they'd receive 3 dwarven rings of power and Moria, but also offered the dark alternative, that things would not seem well for them if they refused. At this prospect, Dain, the king under the mountain, sent the messenger away with a non-reply, saying he needed time to consider, at which the Mouth of Sauron replied, "Not too long." Dain then prepared the mountain for war, knowing the refusal would not be taken well, along with sending Gloin to join the Fellowship to warn the forces of good against the imminent threat and participate in the Council of Elrond. The Mouth of Sauron may have also appeared in 3018, where Sauron learned that Saruman may know where the One Ring was hiding. These messengers struck out to find the Nazgul in the Wold of Rohan, but had failed to find any information about the location of the ring themselves. The Mouth first told the Nazgul of Sauron's terrible threats should they continue to fail in their search, before giving them information to continue searching in Isengard. Appearance during the War of the Ring. The Mouth of Sauron's primary appearance during the War of the Ring was at the parley on March 25th of 3019, leading a small band of black soldiers through the Black Gate, under a banner with the Eye of Sauron to treat with the men of the West's captains. He was sent to deliver the grave missive of Sauron and his terms, which included the total denouncement of Aragorn's claim as king, instead demanding he who would have standing to lead negotiations with him. However, in response, Aragorn's gaze was wicked, and it scared the Mouth into crying out he was only a messenger and not to be harmed. Gandalf assured the Mouth that he was not going to be harmed, but that he was in as much peril as any of Sauron's servants, taking this as a sign that Gandalf was the one to be addressed at the meeting. He then showed the company of the West the items of Sam and Frodo that had been stolen from them during their capture, and garnered a reaction from Peregrine Took that confirmed he knew something was amiss. The Mouth of Sauron was ever cunning, and this was proven to his advantage in the meeting, gaining the reaction of the company at the sight of the confiscated items from their friends. This led to his thoughts and insight about the connection between the company and Frodo and Sam as the marks of a conspiracy, something which was well learned and fostered in the Mouth of Sauron. The Mouth then considered the connection between Gandalf and the spy, before allowing the captains to converse with themselves, noting the horror and fear in their eyes as he insinuated the torture of the spy in the tower if they did not comply. This misery would have given the Mouth great satisfaction considering his dispensity for cruelty, and it's clear they relished this moment. The Mouth then prolonged the suspense and anguish of the company before smiling at each of them in turn, gazing into their eyes and providing Sauron's terms. He would allow the imp to go free, so long as Sauron's terms were heeded totally. The terms stated that the rabble of Gondor and its deluded allies would first swear oaths to never assail Sauron the Great in arms, open or secret ever again, after which they would withdraw west across the Anduin. Sauron's hold over the lands east of the river would last forever. In addition, the lands between the river and the Misty Mountains would possess no weapons and become tributary to Mordor. While Sauron would allow them to govern their own affairs, they would be required to aid in the rebuilding of Isengard as a consequence for its destruction. When the rebuilding is finished, it would belong to Sauron and ruled by his lieutenant rather than Saruman. The Mouth of Sauron seemed to believe he would likely be rewarded with Isengard as part of the New World, and greatly relished to deliver this news to the men of the West. Gandalf only replied that they could not agree to these terms for the ransom of one servant of the good. Also knowing that Sauron was a master of treachery throughout history, it seemed very unlikely that any of this would transpire the way the Dark Lord had offered it, with Gandalf referring to him as the base master of treachery. Sauron has often manipulated and schemed in disguise in the past, and being well aware of this, Gandalf was totally unconvinced of his terms. Demanding to see the prisoner alive, the Mouth laughed, clearly enjoying this dismay, claiming they would have to submit first before any pardon would be given, simply saying, "These are his terms, take them or leave them." At this, Gandalf had no more words to share with the mouth and opened his cloak. With a movement of his hand into the air, a white light was cast across the shadow of the mouth, who recoiled in fear. Gandalf then seized the stolen items of Frodo and Sam. With great anger, Gandalf rejected the words of the mouth and Sauron's terms, claiming that the meeting was over and that death was close for him. There would be no bargaining with Sauron or his followers. With this, the mouth was scared and also venomous, and withdrew back to Cirith Gorgor, whilst also springing an ambush on the company that had been long in the making during the meeting. Fate at the defeat of Sauron. At the climax of the War of the Ring, and on the eve of Sauron's defeat, the Mouth of Sauron's fate is actually not known. It's likely he was at the Battle of the Black Gate that followed his final appearance in the texts. This would make sense considering that most of Sauron's forces and main generals were at this battle. He is never again seen or mentioned, so it seems likely that he may have perished along with the Dark Lord, or maybe even tied to the fate of the One Ring so closely as his master. If he did somehow survive, he fled so far or concealed himself so well that he was never seen again, possibly fleeing with the remaining forces of Sauron that were defeated with the destruction of the One Ring. And so I have now covered the content for this video, but if there's anything that has been missed, please share them in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this content, please remember to like the subscribe and like waystones down below. Na luego vanadvan. Until we meet again.